You're listening to Weekend from the BBC World Service. Now to Europe. From this week, Romanian is the official language of Moldova. On Wednesday, the Moldovan president, Maya Sandu, signed a law referring to the national language as Romanian in all legal texts and in the constitution. The move is intended to resolve a long and, quote, heated dispute over whether the national language should be referred to as Romanian or Moldovan. Well, the Moldovan journalist and author, Paula Erizanu, explains why in this essay for Weekend.
When I first learned that Moldova's parliament voted to replace the mention of the so-called Moldovan language with the Romanian language across all laws, I felt like I was witnessing a historic moment when justice was finally served. But I also had the sense that this decision came 30 years late. Born after Moldova gained independence in 1991, I am a Romanian language writer and reader. Just before starting school, like most of other Moldovan children of my age, my favorite book was Albinuța, or The Little Bee, an iconic primer written by the national poet Grigore Vieru. I loved the puns, the jokes, and the illustrations made by Lica Sainciuc, charmingly conveying the book's sense of mischief. Yet while I read it in the Latin alphabet in the mid-90s, my aunt had read the primer in the Cyrillic script a decade earlier. You see, that's because when the Soviets annexed Moldova during the Second World War, they imposed on us a new cultural identity to make Moldovans feel different from Romanians, with whom we had shared one country during the interwar period. One way to achieve this was by changing the name of the language we spoke. Another was to ban a vast majority of Romanian writers and books, and also to change the Latin alphabet for the Cyrillic script. Yet the Cyrillic letters did not perfectly match Romanian sounds. This was one of the reasons why, in the 60s, following the death of Stalin and de-Stalinization which took place across the then Soviet republics, Moldovan writers pleaded for the return to the Latin script. Alas, all they managed to win at that point was a new letter for the sound J. Their request gained more ground in the 80s, during the period of glasnost or perestroika, when people started reclaiming their heritage more boldly. My parents were journalism students at the time. They had to study Moldovan history in Russian. But together with their friends, they bought Romanian language books in the Latin script from Odessa or Chernivtsi in what was then Soviet Ukraine, as they were not to be found in Moldova. My parents were part of the Moldovan literati. They attended literary musical clubs where classic and patriotic Romanian music and poetry was performed. These clubs eventually grew into our national liberation movement. When 1 million Moldovans gathered in the center of the capital to ask the local Supreme Soviet to vote for the language and the alphabet, my parents were in the crowd. They got what they asked for, the return to the Latin script. But while de facto the authorities gave up on Russian as an official language, they did not go as far as naming Romanian as Moldova's official language, perhaps out of fear of Moscow's reaction. My generation, who grew up after Moldova gained independence from the USSR in 1991, studied Romanian language as our native tongue at school. With one notable exception. In the breakaway region of Transnistria, pupils still study from Soviet-era textbooks in the Cyrillic script. Often, I am asked whether Moldovans speak a dialect of Romanian. That's far from the truth. Without substantial vocabulary or grammatical differences, the accent of Romanian language speakers in Chișinău is the same as that of Romanian language speakers in Iași or Suceava in the eastern region of Romania, which, by the way, is also called Moldova. As far as I'm concerned, insisting that we speak a different language from Romanians is the equivalent of saying that East Germans would have spoken a different language from West Germans while they were separated by the Berlin Wall. Today, Romanian and Moldovan authors like me are part of the same literature. We go to the same festivals, get published by the same publishers in both countries, and speak to the same readers. For us, That language lie is now, hopefully at long last, a relic of the Soviet past.
Moldovan journalist and author Paula Erizanu. There's so much to unwrap in there, isn't there, Maria?
Oh, it was a wonderful essay and fascinating. I mean, language is so easily weaponized. And the first thing I thought of listening to her is, if you look at the map, Moldova is effectively sandwiched between Romania to the west and Ukraine to the east, with Transnistria, the breakaway region between Ukraine and Moldova. So obviously, this is a very political move. It's saying we are an independent country. We're not having any Russian pressure on us at this moment. And it's made me think, I have a wonderful Ukrainian guest living with me at the moment. And she's a Russian speaker. And she's been telling me that in Ukraine, more and more Russian speakers are switching to Ukrainian. And it is a way of saying, this is who we are. But language is so easily weaponized all over the Balkans, where I come from. You know, you talk to a Croat now and say, oh, surely you speak Serbo-Croat. And she'll say, no, I speak Croatian. Whereas in the past, you know, a Croat from Zagreb and a Croat from Dubrovnik would have fewer, more different words in their language than a Serb from Belgrade and a Croat from Zagreb. So language, somebody once said, a language is a dialect with an army.
And Bulama, in so many parts of Africa, that is so true as well, isn't it?
It is indeed. The first thing that struck me in this fantastic essay is the importance of language to identity. And when language is being imposed on people, then it becomes like amputating a part of their body, amputating their history, which I think it's very important. But you are right, Julian, that it is a current issue in Africa as well. Of course, when the essay was being read, it took me back to Africa's colonial history, how everything, African culture, language systems were taken away and a foreign system was imposed. And as we speak today, there is an active war going on in Cameroon between the English-speaking and the French-speaking parts of Cameroon, rebels from the English-speaking part. And their major issue is that they are not allowed to conduct government and official affairs in English, and therefore they are fighting the French-speaking Cameroon, which is the majority. And also in East Africa, there has been a current move by East African governments to make Swahili, which is the most spoken African language in the world, as their official language. And the history of Swahili, unfortunately, in places like Uganda, does not resonate with the people because it is a language known to be spoken by the military. And the military is engaged in lots of human rights abuses and all that. And therefore, people are pushing back and saying, we don't want this language in our school, even though it is an African language that started in Tanzania and is now being adopted by countries like Uganda and Kenya. So it is very important. And finally, it also reminded me of Russia's, imperial tendencies that is current also, unfortunately, in Africa today.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back, Maria, to the point you made about it's one thing to have different languages spoken in a place. It's quite another for those in power, sometimes in power without a great deal of public backing, to say you will only operate in this language.
Well, or in Moldova's case, just to change the name and the alphabet. I mean, that's happened in other places too. If you look at the end of the Ottoman Empire, where the alphabet was changed from Arabic script to Western script, this is all very political stuff.
We will talk more in the next hour with my guest today, Maria Margaronis and Bulama Bukhari. Plenty more to come from them. You're listening to Weekend from the BBC World Service. The latest main international news is next.